Medical, I think I killed my mommy.
Why do you think you killed your mom?
Because I did. I murdered her.
How did you do that?
So I broke the table on her head.
You just heard a daughter confess to murdering her mother. The voice is calm, almost bored, like she's ordering coffee, not admitting to taking a life. That voice belongs to Hend Bustami, and the woman she killed, her own mother, Afaf, a 61-year-old who died on her living room floor, stabbed with pieces of a coffee table her daughter smashed over her head, all because of an argument about cigarettes. Before we go any further into this nightmare, hit that subscribe button. Stories like this need to be told, and victims like Afaf deserve to be remembered. Your subscription helps us keep bringing you cases that matter. Here's what makes this even more twisted. Just months before this murder, Hend went viral. Not for being a killer. For being too pretty to be arrested. She told cops they only wanted to arrest her because she was gorgeous. The internet ate it up. Memes, jokes, the whole circus. People shared her mugshot like it was entertainment. Late-night talk shows made jokes. Twitter turned her into a hashtag. Everyone thought it was hilarious that some delusional woman thought her looks made her above the law. But there's nothing funny about what happened in that quiet Las Vegas home on October 26, 2022. A mother's voice was silenced forever. Her dreams, whatever they were, stolen in a moment of rage that started over something so small it almost sounds fake. Think about the last argument you had with your family. Maybe it was about money, or politics, or whose turn it is to do the dishes. Normal stuff that families fight about. Now imagine that argument ending with someone dead on the floor. That's what happened here. Except the argument was about cigarettes. Something you can buy for $10 at any gas station. Something so trivial that most people forget they even argued about it by the next day. But in the Hussanen Bustami household, nothing was normal. And Hend wasn't thinking like a rational person. She was a ticking time bomb who'd been showing warning signs for months. Signs that everyone ignored until it was too late. How's a fight about cigarettes end with a daughter calmly telling 911 she murdered her mom? How do you go from beauty queen delusions to matricide in just a few months? And why didn't anyone stop this before it happened? If you're already hooked by this case, smash that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. To understand that, we need to know who Afaf really was. Because before she became a victim, she was a person. A mother who tried to help her daughter, even when that daughter was spiraling out of control. A woman whose story almost got lost in the media circus that followed her death. Afaf Hussanen wasn't famous. She didn't have thousands of followers or viral moments. She was just a 61-year-old woman living quietly in a neighborhood most people drive past without thinking twice about. But that's exactly why her story matters. Because most victims aren't celebrities. They're regular people living regular lives until someone takes that away from them. Her house sat near Jones Boulevard and Cactus Avenue in the South Las Vegas Valley, far from the strips, chaos, and neon lights. It's the kind of suburban area where people work regular jobs, worry about their lawns, and know their neighbors just enough to wave hello. The houses there are modest. Nothing fancy. Working-class families trying to make it in a city where the cost of living keeps climbing. Afaf fit right in. She was private, kept to herself. The type of person who lived her life without needing the whole world to watch. You know the type. They pay their bills on time, keep their yard clean, don't cause drama. The kind of neighbor you barely notice until something terrible happens. Then you realize you never really knew them at all. But being private doesn't mean being alone. Afaf was a mother. And if you've ever been a parent, you know what that means. It means your child's problems become your problems. Their mistakes keep you up at night. Their future matters more than your own. And like a lot of mothers, Afaf couldn't give up on her kid, even when that kid was 28 years old and bringing nothing but trouble home. That's the thing about parents. They see potential where everyone else sees problems. They remember the little girl who used to help in the kitchen, not the adult getting arrested at airports. They remember bedtime stories, not courtroom appearances. Afaf kept her doors open for Hend. Kept believing things could get better. Maybe this arrest would be a wake-up call. Maybe this time she'd get clean. Maybe therapy would help. Maybe. Hope can be dangerous when you're dealing with someone who's lost touch with reality. But what else do you do? Kick your child out and hope for the best? Turn your back on someone you brought into this world? Afaf made the choice millions of parents make every day. She chose love over logic, heart over head, and it killed her. The neighbors knew something was off. Police cars in the driveway weren't exactly normal for that street. Raised voices coming through the walls. Arguments that went on too long and got too loud. But this is America in 2022. People mind their own business. Don't want to get involved. Figure someone else will handle it. Or maybe the cops already know what's going on. Still, nobody really knew Afaf well enough to step in. She was friendly but distant. Polite but private. The kind of person who handles her problems behind closed doors and doesn't ask for help. Maybe they should have done more. Maybe someone could have helped. But how do you help someone who doesn't want to admit they need it? Here's what breaks my heart about this story. When Afaf died, there was no big obituary in the papers. No long list of accomplishments or heartfelt tributes from friends. Her death got swallowed up by the media circus around her daughter. The woman who killed her became more famous than she ever was. People shared Hend's mugshot and made memes while Afaf's body was still warm. Her life reduced to a footnote in her daughter's viral story. Afaf's family chose privacy over publicity. They grieved quietly while the internet made jokes about her daughter being too pretty for jail. A loving mother was taken too soon, and the world barely noticed. That's not right. Victims aren't just stepping stones to true crime entertainment. They're people who had lives, dreams, fears, and families who loved them. Every victim deserves to be remembered as more than their final moments. If you believe stories like Afaf's matter, please subscribe to keep their memories alive. Because here's the truth, Afaf Hussanen mattered. Her life had value beyond being someone's mother or someone's victim. She was a human being who deserved to grow old. To see grandchildren, maybe. To have quiet mornings with her coffee and peaceful nights in her own home. All of that was stolen from her in a moment of rage over something as stupid as cigarettes. But to understand how this tragedy happened, we need to look at the other side of the story. The daughter who went from college graduate to viral sensation to killer. Because Hend Bustami's fall from grace didn't happen overnight. Hend Bustami wasn't born a killer. That's important to remember. She was a college graduate. University of Nevada, Las Vegas. For a while, it probably looked like she had a bright future ahead of her. Her mother must have been proud. Probably bragged to neighbors about her daughter getting her degree. Maybe hung the diploma on the wall. Had dreams about grandchildren and successful careers and all the normal things parents hope for. But somewhere along the way, things went wrong. Really wrong. Looking back, it's easy to see the warning signs. But at the time, they probably seemed like normal young adult mistakes. A little partying. Some bad decisions. Everyone goes through a rough patch, right? Except Hend's rough patch turned into a criminal empire. Her record reads like someone testing how much they could get away with. Burglary first. Breaking into places, taking things that didn't belong to her. Then home invasion, actually entering occupied homes while people were there. That's a whole different level of violation. From there, she moved into drugs. Not just using them, but dealing them. Possession with intent to sell. Actual sales. This wasn't some college kid with a baggie of weed. This was someone building a business around illegal substances. Gaming-related crimes, too. In Vegas, that usually means casino fraud or cheating. Using the city's main industry to make dirty money. Each conviction should have been a wake-up call. Each arrest should have been rock bottom. But instead of getting help, Hend kept escalating. Kept pushing boundaries. Kept acting like the rules didn't apply to her. And maybe that's because, in her mind, they didn't. Here's where it gets weird. Hend didn't just break the law. She seemed to think she was special. Above consequences. Like her looks made her untouchable. That delusion hit its peak in August 2022 at Harry Reid International Airport. Just a few months before she'd kill her mother, Hend put on a performance that would make her internet famous for all the wrong reasons. She went to Chili's inside the airport. Ordered food, ate her meal, then just walked out without paying. Dining and dashing isn't exactly a new crime. But what happened next turned it into a viral moment. Security found her passed out near a checkpoint. Drunk or high, nobody's sure. When officers tried to help her, she turned nasty fast. She called them perverts, accused them of wanting to arrest her only because they'd never seen anyone as good-looking as her. Said they wanted to rape her because of her beauty. Think about that for a second. In her mind, being attractive made her a victim. Not the restaurant she stole from. Not the airport staff trying to do their jobs. Her. She actually believed that her looks were both a weapon and a shield. That men couldn't resist her, so any negative interaction had to be about wanting her sexually. That's not normal thinking. That's delusional. The arrest report shows how detached from reality she was, threatening to spit on officers, claiming the arrest was discrimination based on her appearance, acting like the victim while actively breaking multiple laws. The internet loved it. Too pretty to be arrested became a meme overnight. People shared her mugshot like it was comedy gold. Late-night shows made jokes. Social media turned her into a hashtag. Everyone thought it was hilarious that some delusional woman thought her looks made her above the law. But if you look closer at that incident, it's not funny at all. It's terrifying. This wasn't her first time pulling this act. Back in June 2022, she told officers the same thing during another battery arrest. Same claims about her appearance. Same victim mentality. Same complete disconnect from reality. A pattern no one could deny. But everyone ignored. Court records show this wasn't just ego or attitude. Court-appointed psychologists diagnosed her with intermittent exacerbations of psychosis. That's medical speak for her grip on reality came and went. Sometimes she might seem normal, functioning, capable of rational thought. Other times, she'd slip into delusions where she was the center of the universe and everyone else was either worshiping her beauty or persecuting her because of it. She needed treatment. Real, ongoing psychiatric help. Medication management. Professional supervision. Instead, she was living at home with her 61-year-old mother. A woman who loved her but had no idea how to handle what her daughter was becoming. A woman who probably made excuses for Hend's behavior. Who hoped each arrest would be the last one. Who believed love could fix what was clearly a serious mental health crisis. Afaf was trying to save someone who was already lost. And that generous, hopeful nature would eventually get her killed. Because Hend wasn't just delusional about her appearance. She was becoming violent. The battery charges weren't accidents. The threats against police weren't just words. She was escalating towards something much worse. Living in that house was like having a ticking time bomb in the family room. Everyone could hear it counting down, but nobody knew how to stop it. And bombs eventually explode, usually when you least expect it, over something small, something that shouldn't matter at all. The police knew the address, Jones Boulevard and Cactus Avenue. They'd been there before, again and again. Domestic disturbances, loud arguments, neighbors calling in complaints about shouting coming from the Hussanen Bustami house. Each time, officers would show up, calm things down, and leave. Each warning missed. But what were they supposed to do? In America, you can't arrest someone for yelling at their mother. You can't force an adult into treatment just because they're difficult to live with. The system waits for something serious to happen before it acts. By then, it's usually too late. Afaf was trying to hold everything together. Her daughter was spiraling, getting arrested, making headlines, facing multiple felony charges. The woman she'd raised was becoming someone she didn't recognize. But what do you do when your child is 28 years old and destroying her life? You can't ground her. You can't take away her phone. You can't make her go to therapy if she doesn't want to. So Afaf did what a lot of parents do. She enabled. She gave Hend a place to stay when everywhere else fell through. Probably gave her money when she needed it. Made excuses to family and friends. Hoped this time would be different. She's going through a rough patch. She'll figure it out. Things will get better. The mantras desperate parents tell themselves when their child is destroying their life one day at a time. But inside that house, things were getting worse. Much worse. Hend wasn't just dealing with legal troubles. Her grip on reality was slipping further every day. The woman who thought she was too pretty to arrest was now living with someone she saw as the cause of all of her problems. In her mind, Afaf was probably holding her back, cramping her style, nagging her about court dates and responsibilities and all the boring adult stuff she didn't want to deal with. The neighbors noticed the tension building. Police cars in the driveway weren't exactly subtle. Raised voices coming through the walls. Arguments that went on too long and got too loud. Mrs. Henderson next door probably pulled her curtains closed when she heard them fighting. Mr. Lopez across the street probably turned up his TV to drown out the noise. Normal people trying to live normal lives while something toxic festered right next to them. But nobody really intervened. Maybe they thought it wasn't their business. Maybe they figured the cops had it handled since they kept showing up. Maybe they just didn't want to get involved in family drama. This is how tragedies happen. One ignored warning at a time. The system was failing too. Court-appointed psychologist had diagnosed Hend with psychosis. She needed treatment. Real help. Professional intervention. Instead, she was free to come and go as she pleased. Free to terrorize her mother behind closed doors. Free to escalate her behavior without consequences. Free to turn their home into a pressure cooker that was about to explode. Again and again, the warning signs were there. Again and again, nothing meaningful was done. Hend's criminal history should have kept her locked up. Her mental health diagnosis should have triggered mandatory treatment. Her pattern of violence against authority figures should have raised red flags about domestic violence potential. But the system doesn't connect those dots until someone dies. Again and again, opportunities for intervention were missed. Again and again, bureaucracy and legal technicalities let a dangerous person walk free. The courts knew about her. Police knew about her. Mental health professionals knew about her. But nobody had the authority or will to protect the one person who couldn't protect herself, her mother. Afaf was trapped, stuck between loving her daughter and fearing what she was becoming, torn between hope and terror, living with someone who was getting more unstable by the day. How many warnings do we ignore before tragedy strikes? Share your thoughts below. Could this have been prevented? Because here's the brutal truth, this was preventable. Every expert who looked at this case afterwards said the same thing. The signs were all there. The tools existed to help. The only thing missing was the will to act. October 25th, 2022, started like any other night in that house. Afaf probably thought she'd navigate another argument, calm her daughter down, and somehow make it to morning. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she was just hoping for one peaceful night in her own home. She had no idea she was living through her last few hours on Earth. It was just after midnight on October 26th, Tuesday. Most of the neighborhood was asleep. Porch lights were off. Houses were dark. The kind of quiet suburban night where the loudest sound is usually a dog barking or a car door slamming. Afaf was probably tired. She'd been dealing with Hend's legal troubles for months. Court dates, lawyer meetings, bail hearings. The stress of watching your child self-destruct while the whole world makes jokes about it. Maybe she was hoping for one peaceful night. Maybe she thought they could get through this latest crisis without another fight. Then chaos erupted over cigarettes. Cigarettes. Think about that for a second. People argue about cigarettes every day. Where to smoke them. How much they cost. Whether someone should quit. Normal families have these fights and go to bed angry. Wake up the next morning and move on with their lives. But this wasn't a normal family. And Hend wasn't thinking like a normal person. We don't know exactly how it started. Maybe Afaf asked Hend not to smoke in the house. Maybe she was worried about the smell or the cost or her daughter's health. Maybe it was something as simple as asking her to go outside. Or maybe Hend wanted money for cigarettes and Afaf said no. Maybe she was tired of funding her daughter's habits. Maybe she was trying to set boundaries that Hend couldn't accept. Whatever triggered it, the argument escalated fast. Too fast for Afaf to see what was coming. In a normal fight, people yell. They say things they don't mean. They storm off to their rooms and slam doors. In the worst cases, maybe someone throws something or punches a wall. But Hend had lost the ability to think rationally. The woman who thought cops arrested her because of her beauty was now convinced her mother was the enemy. the source of all her problems, someone who needed to be stopped. One moment they're arguing about cigarettes, normal mother-daughter tension that happens in millions of homes every night. The next moment, Hend grabbed the glass coffee table, not to move it out of the way, not to steady herself during the argument, to use it as a weapon. She lifted that table up, small glass coffee table, and smashed her mother's head with a sound must have been horrific. Glass exploded like a bomb going off. Afaf probably screaming, trying to protect herself, not understanding what was happening. But it didn't stop. In most cases of sudden violence, there's immediate quiet. The person realizes what they've done and stops, calls for help, tries to fix the damage they've caused. Not Hend. She looked at the shattered glass scattered across the floor and saw opportunity, picked up the charred, sharp, jagged pieces of what used to be furniture and turned them into weapons, started stabbing her mother in the neck, again and again. This wasn't self-defense. This wasn't a crime of passion that got out of hand. This was calculated brutality, using broken glass like knives to inflict maximum damage on someone who couldn't fight back. Later, when she described it to police, Hend would use her own words, cutting her neck off. That's how she saw what she'd done. Not as hurting her mother or defending herself. As butchery. The living room turned into something unrecognizable. Blood everywhere on the walls, soaking into the carpet, pooling around Afaf's body. Glass scattered like deadly confetti across what used to be a place where a family watched TV together. A woman who'd spent 61 years on this earth was dying on her own floor, killed by the daughter she tried so hard to save. The moment everything changed lasted maybe minutes. But those minutes destroyed 2 lives forever, ended one and ruined another. And when it was over, when Afaf lay still and the house went quiet again, Hend didn't panic, didn't break down, didn't seem to grasp the magnitude of what she'd just done. She just picked up the phone to make a call that would haunt everyone who heard it. At 2:30 a.m., while most of Las Vegas was sleeping, Hend picked up the phone and dialed 911.
Medical, I think I killed my mommy.
Listen to that voice again. Really listen. There's no panic, no crying, no desperation. Just a flat, emotionless tone like she's reporting a broken streetlight, not a murder. The dispatcher, trained to handle crises, tries to understand what she's hearing. Why do you think you killed your mom? Hend's answer is even more chilling. Because I did. I murdered her. No hesitation. No breaking down. No attempt to minimize what happened. Just cold facts delivered like she's reading from a grocery list.
I broke the table on her head.
I broke the table on her head and I cut her neck off. That's how she describes what she did to her mother. Cut her neck off. Not I hurt her, or there's an accident, or I didn't mean to. She knew exactly what she'd done. And she felt absolutely nothing about it. Before police could arrive to process the scene, before paramedics could confirm what everyone already knew, Hend hung up and ran, got in her car and drove south on Interstate 15 toward California. Maybe she thought she could disappear, start fresh somewhere else, become someone new in a different state where nobody knew about the woman too pretty to be arrested or the mother she just butchered. But you can't outrun what you've done, especially when you're covered in your victim's blood. The 911 call had gone out immediately. LVMPD officers were already responding to the address. The California Highway Patrol had been notified to watch for Hend's vehicle. Modern technology makes it hard to vanish completely. 3 hours later, around 5:30 a.m., CHP spotted her near Barstow. Just 3 hours from committing matricide to getting pulled over on a highway. That's how close she came to potentially getting away with murder. When they pulled her over, officers could see the blood on her clothes immediately. This wasn't a minor accident or a nosebleed. This was evidence of serious violence splattered across her shirt and pants. They approached carefully. You never know how someone's going to react when they're covered in blood and driving away from a crime scene. Could be dangerous. Could be suicidal. Could be completely unpredictable. They asked what happened. Standard procedure for someone in her condition. Hend's response, I killed my mother. Same tone, same detachment, same complete disconnect from the horror of what she was admitting. Even seasoned officers who'd seen everything were disturbed by how calm she was. Think about that. These are people who deal with violent criminals every day. Domestic violence, gang shootings, drug-related murders. They've heard every excuse, every sob story, every attempt at manipulation. But Hend's complete lack of emotion was something different, something that made experienced cops uncomfortable. Most people would be hysterical after killing someone, especially their own parent, crying, shaking, trying to explain how it wasn't their fault. But Hend acted like she just told them about the weather. Matter of fact, almost bored. She didn't resist arrest, didn't try to run again, didn't ask for a lawyer or claim innocence. Just sat there while they put handcuffs on, completely disconnected from the reality of what she'd done. The extradition process was swift. Nevada wanted her back to face charges. California was happy to hand over someone who'd committed murder in another state. During the drive back to Las Vegas, officers said she remained eerily calm. No crying, no asking about her mother, no expressions of regret or remorse, just silence. Back in Las Vegas, police were discovering the full horror she'd left behind. Crime scene investigators photographing every angle of the destruction. Blood spatter analysts trying to reconstruct exactly what happened. Coroners removing Afaf's body from a home where she'd lived peacefully for years. The house had been transformed from a family residence into evidence in a murder case. Yellow tape across the front door. Neighbors standing in their yards, trying to process what had happened right next to them. Some of them had heard the argument. The sound of breaking glass. But none had called police fast enough to save Afaf's life. The crime scene photos would later be shown to a grand jury. Images so graphic they had to warn people before displaying them. A coffee table exploded into deadly fragments. Blood pooled on carpet where a mother took her last breath. And through it all, Hend showed no emotion, no regret, no acknowledgement that she destroyed multiple lives in a few minutes of rage. Mental health experts would later say this level of detachment is extremely rare. Even people with serious psychological issues usually show some reaction to committing violence against family members. But Hend seemed to view her mother's death as a problem solved, not a tragedy created. Do you think this could have been prevented? Share your thoughts in the comments. The investigation moved quickly after that. With a confession on tape, a cooperative suspect, and overwhelming physical evidence, prosecutors knew they had a strong case. But this story doesn't end with an arrest. Because what happened in that house exposed something bigger, failures that go way beyond one family's tragedy. The legal system moves slowly. Too slowly for Afaf, but that's how it works. Hend was charged with open murder, a broad category that gave prosecutors room to decide what degree fit the crime. She pleaded not guilty at first. Maybe her lawyers thought they could work with the mental illness angle. But here's where things got messy. The media circus that started with too pretty to be arrested followed her into court. Suddenly, a family tragedy became entertainment. People shared memes while Afaf's relatives tried to grieve in private. The internet had made Hend famous for the wrong reasons. Now that fame was making her case about everything except what mattered, a mother was dead. By March 2023, a grand jury indicted her for murder. They heard the 911 call, saw the crime scene photos. The evidence was overwhelming. Still, the legal process dragged on. Mental health evaluations, competency hearings. Meanwhile, Hend sat in jail, finally facing consequences for her actions. In September 2023, nearly a year after killing her mother, Hend changed her plea. Guilty but mentally ill to second-degree murder. Not guilty, not innocent by reason of insanity. Just an admission that she did it while acknowledging her mental state. December 19, 2023. Sentencing day. Judge Jacqueline Bluth gave her 15 years to life. Parole eligibility in 2037. Hend said nothing. Showed no emotion. Same detachment she'd had during that 911 call. Was justice truly served? Afaf is still dead. Her family is still shattered. And Hend will likely get out while she's still relatively young. But here's the real question. How do we get here? How does someone with documented psychosis, multiple arrests, and a pattern of violence stay free long enough to kill? The system knew about Hend. Courts had diagnosed her. Police had arrested her repeatedly. Yet she was living at home with a vulnerable woman who had no idea how dangerous her daughter had become. These systemic failures cost lives. Stay with us as we examine how communities can better protect vulnerable family members. Because this isn't just about one family's tragedy. It's about all the Afafs out there trying to help someone they love while that person slowly becomes a threat. And it's about what we owe each other when we see the warning signs. In the end, this story isn't really about Hend Bustami. It's about Afaf, a 61-year-old woman who lived quietly in a neighborhood where people minded their own business, who opened her home to a daughter spiraling out of control, who probably went to bed that night hoping tomorrow would be better. She deserves to be remembered for more than how she died. Afaf was born around 1961. She lived through decades of change in America, saw technology transform the world, watched her daughter grow up and graduate college, had dreams and fears and hopes like everyone else. She was a person before she became a victim. A human being with 61 years of experiences, relationships, and memories that mattered to someone. But when you search for her online now, what do you find? Articles about her murder. Headlines about her pretty killer. Comment sections full of people making jokes about the daughter who killed her. That's not right. That's not how anyone should be remembered. Afaf deserves to be honored for the life she lived, not just the violence that ended it. For the love she gave, the sacrifices she made, the hope she maintained even when everyone else gave up. She kept her doors open for Hend when anywhere else would have turned her away. She believed in second chances when her daughter had already used up dozens of them. She chose love over logic, heart over head, right up until the moment that choice killed her. Maybe that makes her naive. Maybe it makes her an enabler. Or maybe it just makes her a mother who couldn't give up on her child, even when that child had given up on herself. But there are questions that won't go away. Questions that haunt everyone who looks closely at this case. What if someone had stepped in earlier? What if the mental health system had actually helped instead of just diagnosing and releasing? What if the community had done more than just call police when the shouting got too loud? What if Hend had been committed for treatment instead of allowed to roam free? What if someone had warned Afaf about how dangerous her daughter was becoming? What if the system designed to protect people had actually worked? We'll never know. And that's the real tragedy here. This wasn't an act of God. This wasn't some unavoidable natural disaster. This was a preventable human tragedy that happened because multiple systems failed at the same time. Untreated mental illness destroyed this family. But so did a legal system that knew someone was dangerous and did nothing meaningful to stop them. So did a society that looked away until it was too late. The warning signs were everywhere. Hend's criminal history showed escalating violence. Her mental health diagnosis indicated she was losing touch with reality. Her behavior toward authority figures suggested she might become dangerous to family members. But nobody connected those dots until Afaf was already dead. Mental health professionals saw the symptoms but couldn't force treatment. Police saw the arrests but couldn't predict murder. Neighbors heard the arguments but didn't want to get involved. Everyone was doing their job, following their protocols, staying in their lane. And a woman died because nobody took responsibility for the big picture. Hend will serve her time behind bars. Maybe she'll get the treatment she should have received years ago. Maybe she'll develop some understanding of what she took from the world when she killed her mother. But probably not. People with her level of attachment rarely develop genuine empathy or remorse. She'll likely serve her minimum sentence and get released, still convinced that she was somehow the victim in all of this. 15 years for a mother's life. That's what the court decided was fair given the circumstances. Some people think it's too lenient. Others argue that mental illness should be a significant mitigating factor. But justice isn't just about punishment. It's about making things right. And nothing can make this right. Afaf is gone forever. Her family has to live with this loss for the rest of their lives. Her community has to grapple with the fact that they failed to protect someone who needed protection. The only way to honor her memory is to do better next time, to pay attention to the warning signs, to intervene before violence erupts, to create systems that actually protect vulnerable people instead of just processing them after they're already hurt. Every true crime story has a real person at its heart, someone who mattered, someone whose life had value beyond the worst thing that happened to them. Afaf Hussanen was that person. A mother who loved too much and paid the ultimate price for it. A woman whose quiet life was overshadowed by her violent death. A victim who deserves to be remembered as more than just a statistic in her killer's story. If this case has taught us anything, it's that we all have a responsibility to each other. To speak up when we see danger. To demand better from our systems. To protect people who can't protect themselves. Because somewhere right now, there's another Afaf. Another loving parent trying to help a troubled child. Another family teetering on the edge of tragedy. Maybe we can save them. Maybe we can learn from Afaf's death and prevent the next one. Maybe we can create a world where mental illness gets treated instead of ignored, where warning signs get heeded instead of dismissed. That would be real justice. That would honor Afaf's memory in a way that no prison sentence ever could. If you believe victims like Afaf deserve justice through remembrance, and that these tragedies must be prevented, subscribe and share to amplify voices that might otherwise be forgotten. If this story shook you and made you think about how we treat mental illness and domestic violence in America, check out our next investigation into systemic failures that cost lives. Click the link in the description to continue. We want to hear your thoughts on this case. Leave a comment below and join the TVC crime story community as we continue to cover the darkest family homicide cases from around the world. Their voices may be silenced, but their stories still demand justice. And sometimes that justice starts with simply refusing to forget.